everybody, I'm Desirée Falzon.
Hi, I'm Victor Falzon.
And welcome to Dinja Waħda Live. We are field teachers on the Dinja Waħda program created by BirdLife Malta and run together with the Education Directorate. Our subject for today.
Well, our subject for today isn't much of a subject, it's more of a collection of subjects. Okay. That's why we called it Did You Know? Okay, these are mostly things that sometimes we hear and sometimes which are maybe not correct and would like to make sure that you know the facts. And also there are some things that people have asked us even during this episode, suggested that we talk about and we tell you something about. Okay, so we try to put them all together, well, some of them, and treat them in this episode.
Good. Shall we go? Right. Screen sharing. Okay. We start with our mystery objects. What do you think this is? We managed to confuse our listeners in the Maltese version of this program half an hour ago.
What on earth is that?
What is this? As you know, it's something from nature. You're sending us your answers in the Q&A panel at the side. And if you want us to know who you are, don't forget to write your name. This is something from nature, so it's a living thing. It's plant or animal, and it's something you would find in the countryside. What could it be?
Or maybe underwater.
Yes, of course. Would you call countryside underwater?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. So, well, who knows?
Wet countryside.
Dripping wet.
Okay.
Soggy wet.
Okay.
All right. So let's giving you some time. We'll move on. Answers have started coming in. Good. Our subject, as we said, is a collection of subjects. Did you know? And we start with 4 living things here. We have a swallowtail butterfly, a lovely pink stroke purple dark pink flower at the top, the Maltese rock centauri, our national plants. We have also a woodlouse and a lizard. Vic, what do you think these 4 have in common?
Okay, they're living things.
Good. I said that though.
All right. I think among the 4, they make up the colors of the rainbow, maybe?
Rainbow? Seriously? Have you ever seen grey in a rainbow?
Okay, let's go to a bit of yellow there. I don't know.
Try again.
They're spiky.
Well, one is certainly spiky, antennae, but can you see any spikes on the lizard?
No, not unless it changes its hairstyle, but then it doesn't have any hair anyway.
Try again.
Right, so I think they all eat and attack each other, maybe?
Are you serious? This is what you're saying? Eat and attack each other? Really?
Okay, that was a joke.
I'd love to see that plant turning into.
Plant,
yes. Yeah, I love it.
In the scheme that
woodlouse suddenly plant
going to get it.
turns predator. No.
Right, well, I don't know. I give up.
Okay.
Tell me the answer.
All right, I'll tell you the answer. So these 4 living things are found only in our islands, in Malta, only in Malta. We're so small, so many people, and yet we have plants and animals that are found only in Malta. In fact, we have a word for it. It's called endemic.
Wow, such a tiny place as Malta, and we have endemic species,
We have endemic species, that's types of plants and animals, found only here. Now, how does that happen? Before I go on to how, I must tell you that they're not the only ones. We have about 80 plants, animals. Most of them are small, like these 3 here. On the left, there is a glowworm.
That's a male glowworm.
It's a male, so it's not in the form of a worm. It's the flying one. The female is the one that glows. It doesn't fly. And it's found only in Malta, this particular type of insect here.
Wow.
And in the middle, we have a plant called the Maltese everlasting, which, even though it's called Maltese, is only found in Gozo. Some nurseries may be growing them in Malta, but in the wild, it's only found in Gozo. And Gozo is even smaller than Malta as a rock, and yet it's got a plant found nowhere else in the world. And on the right, that cute little furry thing, it's not a mouse. Did you guess what it is? With that long nose, very different from a mouse.
It looks like a shrew there.
Indeed it is, that's a shrew. And it's a carnivore, it eats meat, it's a predator, it's very, very small. And this particular one is found, this one is found only in Gozo. Again, we have a shrew that's found in Malta, but this one is only in Gozo.
And Sicily.
And Sicily. So you could have animals or plants that are found in a very small place in the Mediterranean, for example. This
is really strange, because this guy here, this shrew, you don't get it in Malta, but you get it in Gozo and Sicily. 100 kilometers away. Now, how did that happen?
How do endemics happen?
We have shrews in Malta. We have a species which is different from this one. They all look a bit like each other. But the one we have in Malta, you find it all over the world.
Right.
But this one, the one in Gozo, you only find it there and in Sicily.
How do these things happen? Well.
Wow, an elephant. Don't tell me you have elephants as well.
Today we don't, but we used to. We used to have elephants in Malta. And the cool thing is that the elephant we had in Malta was very special because it was a dwarf. It was hardly, well, it was actually the size of a human, right? Bulkier, yes, but we're talking about thousands of years ago. We're talking about many, many years ago. They don't exist anymore today. Now, how does an elephant get small and become the only one of its type in the whole world?
Yeah, how do endemic animals and plants, I mean, do they come from different parts of the world and just stay here to be special? What happens?
Let me show you. So many, many, many years ago, Malta was different. This is Malta here on the left. We have the 3 islands there, that's the biggest island, Malta. In between is Kemuna, and then you have Gozo, Audesh. And we have on the top right, we have the tip of Africa showing there, in between of Sicily, Sicily. Africa would be at the bottom, wouldn't it? Sicily. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. So between Malta and Sicily, there is the sea. But it wasn't always like this. Many, many years ago, at a time called the Ice Age, do you remember the cartoons, the Ice Age? Well, that really happened thousands of years ago.
More than once.
More than once. And what happens in an ice age is that the rivers freeze and the sea doesn't get fresh water. So the sea level starts going down. And thousands of years ago, the sea level went so down, it decreased so much, there was less and less water, that the land in between Malta and Sicily started to show. It was not covered in water, in sea. So the animals could move from Malta to Sicily and they could cross over.
So it was just regular land then?
Exactly. So an animal like a bear or a wolf or an elephant who was living in Sicily was just walking on the rest of the land and it walked over to Malta.
So an animal, for example, on that part of the land which today is Gozo, could walk all the way to Finland.
Exactly.
Because it was all land.
All land.
Well, lots of that was ice.
Because the sea had gone down, the sea level. So let's take a look at this from the side. Like you cut away the land and you're looking at it from the side. This is what it would have looked like at the time. So we have on the left, there's Sicily. And any animal that wants to continue walking, finding food, crossing over the land could easily end up in Malta because there is nothing to stop them. There may have been some lakes in between, but really very easy to cross. And there are deer as well at the time.
Oh, there were hippos as well.
And hippos,
and
yes.
And wolves and bears, yes, as you were saying.
Absolutely. But the Ice Age did not last. The climate, the temperature started warming up and the rivers started melting and the sea rose again. There was more water, the rivers were pouring into the sea, and the sea level rose again. Uh-oh, now the animals that had crossed over from Sicily to Malta were stuck on Malta. And the problem with that is that Malta is very small. So if you're a very big animal like an elephant, there isn't going to be enough food for you. So what happens to you?
I think many of them died.
In fact, yes. The sea level went up further and further to the level it is today. And many of the animals that were too big started dying because they didn't find enough food. But what happened to the elephant? The story of the elephant continued because elephants started having babies, as animals, all living things do. And the ones that were younger could survive. The ones that were smaller could survive because there was enough food for them. So the animals that survived, the elephants that survived, started getting smaller and smaller.
Over time, over thousands of years.
Over thousands of years, yes. And that's how Malta got its dwarf elephant. And finally, the tiny elephants that are not much larger than humans became an endemic type of animal found in Malta only.
So the elephants that were on the mainland, on the rest of the Sicily and the rest of the continent,
stayed the same size.
Yes, until they went extinct as well. But the ones in Malta, they grew smaller because Malta is tiny. It couldn't hold huge animals. We were have to keep them alive.
Exactly.
So they became dwarfs. So that's how endemics. So is it true that on islands you find more endemic animals and plants?
Yes, exactly, for this reason. Because islands may once upon a time have been part of a bigger piece of land, the mainland. And then the sea level changes, they get cut off, and they have to start changing because now the island is a smaller place. And if you don't change, well, you're not going to live in your environment. Your habitat is not good for you. Now,
that's how they become special then.
We mentioned the lizards before. Now, lizards are quite common animals, aren't they? I'm sure you've seen a lizard, but believe it or not, our lizards are endemic. You will only find our lizards in Malta, in the Maltese Islands.
And not only that,
even
the Maltese Islands themselves, they can be different. I read somewhere.
Take a look at this map. This is the map of Malta. We have the 3 islands here and Filfla at the bottom. The 3 main islands and Filfla at the bottom. So this lizard, the one you see here, is found, we can see it in Gozo, Camuna, and on Malta itself. But this one is found only in one little place. Can you see the circle around?
That's a tiny island called Fungus Rock or Jebla al General at the very, very west tip of Gozo.
It's got sea all around it, which means that this lizard is cut off from the lizards on the rest of Malta, Gozo, and Comino. So what happened was this lizard started changing. And today we have the lizard you can see in the picture, which is endemic. It is found only on that rock.
It's slightly different, but the colors are quite different.
Yeah, quite different. And here's another one. Can you see on the map here, there, the circle right in the middle where the 4 pictures meet?
Those are St. Paul's Islands, no?
On St. Paul's Islands, the same thing happened. A small island surrounded by water, and the lizard started changing. And that is a different type, a different species, we call it, of lizard. It's endemic to those islands. Unfortunately, it has probably gone extinct. It is very easy for endemic animals to go extinct. If something changes because they're in a very small space, they have nowhere to go, they can easily just die out. And this, in recent years, no one has seen it. So probably it is extinct. And then we have this beautiful lizard, only found not just Malta, but in Filfla. At the circle at the bottom of the map there towards Zurich, we have Filfla, a tiny island, and there's this beautiful lizard. And you can see how animals change when they are cut off from the rest. This one has developed some really beautiful colors, only in Malta. So in Malta we have 4, not 1, but 4 types of endemic lizards, just ours. Now, talking about the lizard of Filfla, some people say that the lizard on Filfla has 2 tails. Well, here you can see that that is a myth. And I'm going to bust that myth. The lizard on Filfla has only 1 tail. It's a beautiful animal. So why did this legend happen? Who invented this myth? Probably this is what happened. I think you know, right, that when lizards or geckos are chased by a predator, they can drop off their tail. Why? Because the tail starts wriggling, the predator starts playing with the tail, thinking that that's the animal, and the animal itself hurries off to safety. Now, what happens to the animal? Does it remain tailless? No, it grows a new tail. And we think what happened was that a lizard on Filfla was chased by a predator or had some difficult situation, wanted to drop off its tail did not drop off completely, and it started growing a new one. And some fishermen may have seen this lizard with 2 tails and thought, oh wow, the lizards on Filfla have 2 tails. Look, a bit like this gecko. Geckos do the same thing, they are cousins of the lizards, and this is what happened. You can see the old tail at the bottom, it's rather drier, shriveled up, and the new tail has come out. The gecko must have had some misfortune, something was happening to it, and maybe it was chased. It tried to drop off its old tail, which didn't drop off completely, and the new one grew out. And our friend Manuel managed to take this photo of a 2-tailed gecko. It doesn't mean that other geckos have 2 tails.
It was just an accident.
It was just an accident. Now, here's another animal that we showed in the first 4 pictures. This butterfly is also endemic, and it's beautiful and big, and it's called a swallowtail. Look at why. This is the swallow, and the tail of a swallow is like a fork with 2 prongs, with 2 bits, 2 pointy bits. And if you look at the butterfly's tail, it's also with 2 bits sticking out. So it's called a swallowtail. Now this butterfly is so beautiful. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's quite common, and it's so big and beautiful and spectacular and wonderful that people notice it, even people who don't really care about nature usually. And in Malta, it has many, many names because it is so popular. Now I'm going to turn to the Maltese names. Farfet tal-fejel, meaning the butterfly of fejel, which is rue in English. Fejel is this plant you see on this left, and it's called Farfet tal-fejel because the butterfly lays its eggs and the caterpillars grow on and eat this plant. It's also called Farfet tal-buzbis, butterfly of buzbis, which is the fennel. Now, the young of the caterpillar, the caterpillar of the swallowtail butterfly, also lives on this plant. There are so many names for this butterfly because it is so popular. There are about, how many of it did you say?
In fact, yes, so far I have collected 18 of them.
Wow, 18 names. There are probably more.
These are just 2 names here.
In fact, in the next issue of Il Huttafa, our Young Members magazine, we're going to get these names. So if you're curious and want to know more, just join our club and read more about that butterfly. 2 weeks ago, we were lucky enough that this butterfly came to lay eggs in our garden. Actually, not luck is part of it, because we planted fennel so that we would attract butterflies. And there it was.
A lovely egg. How big is that?
That is the size of a pinhead. That's all it is. And here's the young. How old is this? 3 days? Yeah.
About 3 or 4 days.
3 or 4 days old.
It's already looking all that complicated with
look at that.
And colors and quite a pattern there, even on its eyes.
We're following it every day to see how big it grows and what happens.
Let's hope it doesn't get eaten by wasps.
Let's hope so. Now, we mentioned the fennel, and here are 4 other plants like the fennel. How? The fennel is the one on the bottom left. On top of it, with the purple flowers, is Mediterranean thyme, satar. On the right is fejel, rue, and at the bottom is sticky fleabane, which is called tullera in Maltese. All 4 of these and many others like them have a very strong taste in their leaves.
And very strong smell too.
And a very strong smell too.
If you touch their leaf, they give off this wonderful smell, wonderful aroma. They're called aromatics.
In fact, they're called aromatics, like mint and oregano. Now, did you know that these plants came to have this taste as a defense to defend themselves against predators? What predators do plants have? Well, you know what? Animals that eat plants. And one particular one, the goat, did not like the taste of the aromatics.
It looks particularly disgusted there.
It is very disgusted, and that's exactly what the plant wants, because goats will eat everything, and if they find a shrub that they like in papers, they will eat it. So these plants over hundreds and thousands of years developed these tastes so that they wouldn't be eaten by goats. Now here's a plant that looks quite like the fennel. It's in fact the giant ferule. And this particular one is also endemic. And you know what? This endemic ferula was only discovered 2 years ago, because it looks like the one that grows in the rest of the Mediterranean.
Well, actually, it's very common, and we've known about it all our lives. What we didn't know was that it was endemic to Malta.
Yeah, and scientists in Italy were looking at it properly, and they looked at it under the microscope, and they found out that it is actually different from theirs. So, in fact,
they changed its name.
They changed its name.
No, nowadays we used to call this the giant fennel. Nowadays we call it the Maltese ferule.
Wow.
There's the word Maltese, meaning it only grows here.
Only here.
It's very similar to the ones in Italy and North Africa, but it's different.
There are differences.
And it's a different species.
And once we're on the subject of the Maltese ferule, there's a nice little story about it. You know how the Greeks in ancient, very old times used to invent stories so that they could understand the world around them, and they had a lot of stories about gods. And their gods were always fighting and quarreling and getting jealous of each other and doing bad things to humans and doing good things to humans. And, well, there is one story about one of the gods called Prometheus. He liked humans, he liked people, and he felt sorry for people shivering in the cold. And he wanted to take fire, but the god of all gods, Zeus, did not allow him to. It was not allowed. The god Zeus wanted to keep fire only for the gods. But Prometheus had a trick up his sleeve. He grabbed the stalk of a giant fennel, now we can call it the Maltese ferule, because inside it there are a lot of thin hairs. It's very fibrous, like hair, like thick hair actually. And if you put a fire inside, an ember inside, it will burn for quite a long time without burning the green stalk on the outside. So he thought, I'll get an ember, which is a glowing piece of fire, put it inside the ferule so that Zeus won't see me, and fly down to humans and give it to them.
But I can see smoke coming out of the ferule.
But smoke is not fire, is it? And Zeus didn't notice, and he made it, and that is the story of how humans got fire. It's a legend, of course, and Prometheus in the legend got punished for it.
Yes, he was stuck to a mountain.
Yes, he was chained to a mountain.
Nailed to a mountain.
Let's change.
Yeah, let's stop.
Let's stop there.
It gets more nasty then.
Nasty, yes.
Right.
But anyhow, thanks to Prometheus, we have fire.
But that's of course legend. It's important that we know that something is a story, and we know also what is facts.
Absolutely. Now, more facts. Here's the chameleon. You've recognized the chameleon. It's one of our reptiles. And the cool thing about the chameleon is camouflage, isn't it? But the thing is, it's always changing. On the bottom left, we've got a pale, almost yellow one. Whereas right in the middle there, at the bottom in the middle, it's got all sorts of colors. There's dark green, light green, there's yellow bits, almost black. Wow. And then to the right, it goes brown with patches and patches of yellow at the top. It's amazing how it changes. But one of the things that people invent about this chameleon is something something that my students tell me, and I want to share with you because it's absolutely not true. They often ask me, is it true that when a chameleon sees red, it dies because it panics, it tries to change into red and it can't. So it starts changing all colors and it drops its tail off and it swells up until it dies. These explodes. Oh, these are all silly things that people invent. I don't know where they invented this one from, but it's absolutely not true. In nature, the colors of a chameleon are the ones that you saw. Now here's another one that people ask me about. This is a sparrow. You've seen the sparrow because it's our most common bird. But one thing people keep thinking is that sparrows live in nests like other birds. Birds live in nests. No, they don't. What would you spend all your time within a small place like that for? You only do that if you're a baby. I mean, do people live in cots? No, they don't. Do people live in the bed? Well, some people do, but anyhow. You know, you don't live there, you're born there, but you only stay there until you can fly out. During the rest of the time, birds, like the sparrow,
are having the time of their life.
Exactly. You find water. This one on the left here is bathing in water to remove maybe insects on his fur. They look for food in fields. They stay in fields. And in the evening, when they're not having the nest time, which is spring and early summer, they go to sleep in groups of trees like this. So birds do not live in nests. They have their young in nests.
So as soon as the young ones grow and they grow feathers and they learn to fly, it's bye-bye nest and they won't use it again.
Absolutely.
They don't go back there to sleep at night and things like that. No, they just sleep out.
These myths, these stories that people say about nature are harmless. They don't hurt nature. But there are some stories that people invent that do harm. They give a bad name to nature. And one of them is about the gecko. My grandmother was convinced that the gecko was eating her plants. And I've heard people say this. I do. I've seen the bite marks in plants. I'm sorry, but geckos don't eat plants. We did it last week, didn't we? Or the week before? We did when we talked about food chains last week. Predators. We know that these are predators. So what are these geckos doing on a tree here? This is a cypress tree, a very old one at Busquet. And there are two geckos. They're just taking some sun. They're just getting warm before they go in because they come out at night. And what do they do at night? They catch insects. They're predators. They catch moths, for example. They definitely don't like plants. They don't eat plants. So that's a myth there. Like their cousins, the other reptiles, the lizard and the skink, not skunk, skink. These are two reptiles that we find also in Malta, which eat insects as well. Reptiles eat insects.
What a sleepy skink there.
Oh, it's enjoying the sun. It's like it's on a sunbed, isn't it?
So why is it so shiny?
The scales are shiny, that's all. It's got nothing to do with the Maltese name Shahmet Lart. Shaham means fat. It's not slimy at all.
So it's not shiny because it's covered in slime or something.
Reptiles have scales. They are hard things and shiny things. So it's like wax over a car, if you like, but they're very clean.
Of course.
And nothing to be scared of.
You're looking at something really clean, and yet people say it's disgusting, let's kill it, which is
why on earth would you kill it? Even if you wanted to get rid of some pests, insects, you should have these things. You should be growing them. No, you shouldn't, but anyway, just let nature be. And here's, of course, another animal that has a lot of bad press, we call it, which has a lot of bad things said about it, snakes. Now, it's true that there are snakes which are poisonous, but not the ones we have in Malta. In Malta, we have 4 types of snakes, and here are 3 of them. There's the leopard snake on the left, the cat snake at the top, and the black whip snake at the bottom. And all of them are predators, but not of humans. They do not hurt humans. So, myth busted. Don't be afraid of snakes. They are not going to hurt you. They're just predators like any other cute, cuddly animal.
These animals are protected because their main food happens to be mice and rats. And these guys, without knowing, they're doing people a service. So people are protected in return to say thank you for providing the service. They get protected by law.
By law. But
So,
people will say things and get scared, and they seem to want to believe bad things. I don't know why. I think they're beautiful animals. Now, some stories are not harmful at all to nature, and here's one of them. The robin comes at Christmas time. Oh, is this you?
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It looks cute, like
it looks very cute, actually.
Like Santa Claus there.
But we think that the robin is cute enough on its own. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
So robins don't come at Christmas. Christmas is December, and the weather has already gone cold in December. They come in October when the weather is changing. It's too cold where they're living, like we said in the first program about migration. And they're here in November and December and January, February, and in March. And then the weather starts getting too warm over here and they fly back up north, Italy, Europe. So robins arrive in October in Malta. These animals, on the other hand, get a lot of myths. And one of these myths is stories, is that they bring bad luck. What a silly myth. Why on earth would an animal, even be thinking about humans and their luck? How can an animal know about luck? It's just a silly thing. Maybe because they come inside and they go around lamps. I have no idea where this one came from. But
some people invent all sorts of stories about things they don't understand anything about. So instead of just saying nothing about it, they invent things.
They invent things. These are beautiful animals that are very, very
Since they usually fly at night, these animals, sometimes
maybe that's why.
They find a lamp inside, they find an open window and they come in. And sometimes they scare people just because they come in flying around the lamp. And people invent all sorts of stories. But as you're saying, yes, this is all. It's
a story. It's invented. And here's another animal who has a very strong myth. In fact, when I was young, I used to be scared of grasshoppers because people told me that those teeth-like bits on the leg can hurt you, and they're like a knife. But the fact is that they are neither a knife, nor a spoon, nor a fork. Those are more like a violin, because a grasshopper uses those teeth to rub against its wings or its body to make a sound. You know, the you hear? That's all. It's just their voice. Oh, look at these beautiful plants. Look at that blue one in the middle. We have so many wonderful wild plants, and you know that wild plants are very good. Why are they good? Well, wild plants provide food for pollinators. But we have another word for wild plants. Many people call them weeds. In Maltese, they're called hashish hazin, bad plants.
Oh, how I hate that word.
I really hate that word. There's nothing bad about them. Let me show you. This on the right here is a pumpkin flower. It lasts only a day. And for a pumpkin flower to turn into a pumpkin, you need pollinators like these bees. Now, if these bees pollinate your pumpkin flower, when the flower dies, they have nothing to eat. So where are they going to go? Wildflowers, of course. Wildflowers keep pollinators alive. So really, perhaps the farmers who originally, not today's farmers, who originally in the first place invented the word hashish hazin, weeds, gardeners invented the word weeds, because perhaps they were growing where the farmer wanted to grow crops to eat. They really should not be calling them bad plants at all, but they should be calling them wildflowers, wild plants. They grow wild, they don't need care, and they are feeding your pollinators. So please join us. Never say weeds again. Don't use the word hashish hazin. Use hashish salvage or wild plants. In fact, what we've seen over here is that when people don't understand nature, they invent stories which aren't true, which can do harm to them. But if you understand nature, you can help it. In our garden, Vic and I, what we try to do is see, observe, understand, and make places. For example, geckos, we noticed, like staying behind things. So we have some things on the garden wall where they can shelter behind. We also put some stones because we know that reptiles like sunning themselves, and the stone is like an oven. It takes the sun's heat and then it can warm their belly. Oh, how nice.
I feel like doing the same thing.
Maybe not today, it's getting rather hot. And wildflowers, of course, we have patches in our garden where we let wildflowers grow, so that throughout the year we have food for pollinators. And our last one is, can you see this pile of twigs? Well, there's a story behind this one. So we have a compost pile, and I put these twigs over there waiting to cut them up. But meanwhile, we started finding all sorts of animals. We started finding that the lizards liked hiding, sheltering, and coming out for a bit of sun. And we observed and we learned. And one day we saw this happening, which we had never seen before. These bees were coming in to sleep. These are called digger bees. Digger bees, yes. And they're coming in to sleep. Oh, look at this one. He's just joined and he's kicking about and he's waking up
to cuddle, I think.
Looks like very cuddly, mind you. Ah, finally, gone to sleep. And it's beautiful. And we learned that because we love nature and we look at nature. Now here's a tip for you. If you like nature, join us in Club Huttaf. BirdLife have a young members group. And we send this magazine. And inside it, we say all these things. We show people nature. We are always learning too. So we show you things that we're learning all the time. We're taking photos in our garden and we show you how to get nature towards the places you live in, even if it's a small place. We don't have a big garden. So how do you do that? Find birdlifemalta.org on the internet and find where you can join. It's very easy. It's only €10 a year. Do you like nature? Join us. We're at the end of our program and I'd like to thank now all the wonderful people who lent us their photos for today's live event, and also Steph from the office for support. Our mysterious object of today. How did we do, Vic?
Oh yes, we've had quite an interesting list. Some said truffles, some said pine cones, some said rubble walls, rocks, moss, coral even. Turtle's shell.
Oh wow.
Okay. Some even said poop.
Well, I can see why you said that.
Fossilized, maybe.
Imagine that.
But we did get the right answers as well.
You did.
Yes,
okay.
Some even recognized the species.
Oh.
Okay. So what is it? It's part of a tree. And actually, one actually said a carob tree.
Wow.
Others said a tree trunk, a branch of a tree.
Joelle said that.
Bark of, her name was Joelle. Bark of a tree. Yes, and that's exactly what it is. It's
an old tree, isn't it?
Yes.
It's an old tree.
And it's more than a few years old. It's older than me.
A few hundreds, I would say. Well done. We love reading your answers, even when you send us the captions. In fact, this time had so many good answers and we love them. We just love your imagination. So we had to choose and we chose these three. Hello, are you a lady? And that was Abigail Bedzina from Goudia Primary, who imagined that was a guy and he saw his reflection and thought it was a female. And then there was, who is that sandpiper? Julia de Battista imagined that he was seeing his reflection and thought it was another one and got all aggressive about it and angry. And then this lady, so you know that this program is open to students, teachers and parents. And this lady from Mosta Primary, Marianne Gregg, has been sending us captions and they're very good. And this time we decided, let's get you. She actually turned 61 during this program because we saw the age change. And she said, you won't catch any fish upside down in the water. We shortened it a bit, Marianne, to be a caption, which is really good. And she's imagining that there's another bird and our wood sandpiper is giving it advice. How can you catch fish from upside down? Very clever, Marianne. Keep it coming. This week, we've got this scene for you. We have two birds here. The one on the left is a black-winged stilt. And it seems to be, I don't know, kicking. Maybe it's got a nest. I don't know. Wants to protect its young.
Maybe it's a new dance. I don't know.
Maybe they're dancing. I don't know. But the egret on the right has some pretty good moves too. Well, tell us what you think. send your answers, send your captions. It's just a game, send them, but we love reading your answers. The link will be posted after this live event. I'll remind you that our email is dinjawahda@birdlifemalta.org and that we have a Facebook page. Please like us and do go in and see if there's any games you'd like to play and family activities. Switching screen. So I'll stop sharing for a second there.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I've been answering questions.
You've been answering questions, have you?
Yes, I've rubbed off my fingerprints answering questions. Get so many curious kids. That's lovely. That's good. The more curious you are, the more you learn, the more we can help nature. Okay?
That's absolutely true. So while we'd love to see you in Club Hutaf, we'll tell you that this is the one before the last, and we have our last live event next week. And we look forward to seeing you.
Mm-hmm. That's it for today, I think.
Yes, so on behalf of BirdLife Malta and the Dinja Waħda program, goodbye.
Goodbye. See you next week.